Hello everyone and welcome back. Tonight I thought we might drift off to sleep discussing the nature of non-being. So we can all melt into our beds listening about the source of all things living in the universe, the great integrity, the Tao. We'll be reading from the text by Lao Tzu called the Dao De Jing, which is an ancient Chinese text describing the Tao. And it's essentially an almost mystic philosophy surrounding the nature of life and the nature of existence, which essentially says that we are all part of an ineffable and all-encompassing whole, which contains knowledge of the universe, one that is always in harmony and is always seeking balance. And the Dao De Jing helps us think about how we can live in balance with this great source. And by living in that balance, we can release ourselves from the knowledge given to us by human civilization that becomes the root of our suffering. All of the knowledge that tricks us into desire, that tricks us into actions that go against the flow of the Tao. Okay. So, before we go ahead and look at the book, which I have here, the Tao Te Ching, we'll think a little bit about the history and what the book is trying to accomplish. I also have another book as well called Solaris, which is a wonderful science fiction text that depicts another planet called Solaris. The planet Solaris, and on Solaris there's a great ocean. And that ocean seems to be alive, it seems to be conscious, it seems to have reached this kind of great knowledge where it has settled into a brilliant contemplating inaction with the universe. And so we'll think about that great ocean as well, and how this science fiction depiction of a futuristic planet actually brings us back to the root of ancient Chinese philosophy. So we'll start there with the concept of spiralic time. Spiralic, as you know, is a spiral. So in spiralic time, essentially, we think about society as always progressing back to the beginning. Okay? That for us, when we imagine the future, we're actually imagining a primordial past. And so for us, the future is really past. We are constantly imagining that the future will bring us to a knowledge that so much philosophy says we knew innately in our bodies as youths. The Dao De Jing looks at aging in a very interesting way. It considers the birth to be a point of weakness, of softness, and as you grow, you become stronger and harder. And as you grow stronger and harder, you become more and more away from the Tao, more and more away from the great source from which we all come. So when you are young, when you are new, that is when you know the most. And growing is the process of unlearning what you knew at first. It's about learning things from a human society, an artificial society that is not in line with the Tao. And so as you grow harder and harder and harder, you become so hard that you die. But when you die, you become soft again. And you return to the original softness of your birth. And so society is also like this. We are facing problems now. We know that. We are always, as societies, facing problems that we must solve. And Einstein said that you cannot solve problems with the same mindset which gave you those problems in the first place, right? We cannot solve our problems with the same state of mind that created them. And so we are finding now that retreating to ancient philosophies as we deal with the problems of a modern world allows us to change the way we think so we can approach these problems differently. What it means is that we are actually entering into that spiral of time, that the end will take us back to the beginning. Essentially, the theories promoting pre-agricultural egalitarian modes of life in the face of overusing resources, in the face of global climates changing, is essentially that as people, when we imagine an ideal future, we are oftentimes really imagining a return to an ideal past. As if in the birth of the world we understood that mystic power, and now our desire is to return to it. The spiral accepts that the past is future, and that we are building ourselves back to the beginning, that we are always in life building ourselves back to the beginning. In order to get to the beginning, there needs to be some sort of collapse. And so life is the process of returning to the great source, as the Tao would look at it. Okay. Now, I refer to this great whole, and that's a word called Gestalt. And so I write it down because that's a word that we ought to know to understand the Tao. And Gestalt is a German term, and it's going to mix nicely with another term called Gnosis. And those would be a kind of two nice little G words before I talk tonight. So I'll start with Gestalt. That is German. German. Just Gestalt. A whole that is perceived as more than the sum of its parts. It is not the house that makes. It's not the walls that make the house, but the house that makes the walls. So you can think about it as like a reversal. It is not the pages that make the book, but the book that makes the pages. It is the whole. It is more than just its pages. It's a good way to think about books. Books are far more than just the word that built it. There is something ineffable that climbs out of books when you read them. So that's Gestalt. A whole that is perceived. Yeah. Oh, terrible. I hate the ring light. I don't know how to deal with that. Oh, just look at it. It's like the sun. It's the planet Solaris. Just think of it like that. So Gestalt is a whole that is perceived as more than the sum of its parts. It is not the parts that create the whole, but the whole that keeps the parts together. Okay. And then Gnosis, another word with a funny little G. This is Greek. Gnosis. Knowledge is what it means in Greek. Knowledge. And it is the intimate awareness, or intuitive awareness of life's hidden mysteries. It is the ineffable, right? Hidden mysteries rather than analytical knowledge. And so the knowledge of human societies, of modern society, that would be considered analytical knowledge. And that is not what the Dao De Jing is interested in. The Dao De Jing is interested in the Gnosis. Okay? The Gnosis here. Right? Intuitive awareness of hidden mysteries rather than analytical realities or knowledge, other than the things that are in front of your face, distracting you from that innate knowledge you have of a great source, one that you cannot describe, and that is why it is not analytical. So the Tao Te Ching is dealing with these two terms, the Gestalt, which is the whole and all of the parts, interconnected workings within the whole, and then Gnosis, that intuitive awareness of the whole without having the words or the analytical knowledge to describe that whole. And it is the very fact of the inability to describe it that ensures that it is the great source. Because the moment you describe it, it becomes cemented. And if it's cemented, it will die. But the great source does not die. Universes die, but the great source does not. And so if we were to be able to describe it, it would essentially take away all of its infinite value. You cannot describe the infinite, because the moment you describe it, it is no longer infinite. So that is the central kind of paradox of the Tao Te Ching that makes people struggle to understand it and understand the words of it, because it is a text using words to describe that which cannot be described in words. So you can imagine this is an impossible task. But the Tao Te Ching is not only that. It is not only this mystic exploration of a great source. It is also culturally important, where it's important to think about its cultural relevance and the reason for its existence. Okay. Let me just make sure. Okay, so other things that, yes, and we'll see play out as we read it. It is a handbook of prudent life philosophy. And so we'll read a lot about how to live aligned with the universe rather than against it. It's a treatise on political strategy. And some of the ways that it is like that is it promotes weakness as a strength. And so in the time of ancient China, a large political problem would be, how do we get these smaller cities or states to answer to the larger ones, right? In empire, you have this issue. How do we get the smaller groups to behave? Well, it teaches a kind of humility, that there is nothing wrong with accepting the help of a greater, larger power. There is nothing wrong with seeking solace in that greater, larger power. So it certainly had political importance at that time. Lao Tzu also wrote the Dao De Jing. It's suggested, not proven, but it is written towards, as advice towards a sage king, and that essentially civilization would be saved by a great sage king, kind of like a philosopher king, one that could bring this sage advice and knowledge of the great source, not knowledge of civilization and greed and all of those things and how to dominate people. It wasn't about domination, no. It was about how to live in an interconnected way, how to live in harmony, in peace with everyone, how to seek help from others without having fear from seeking that help, how to be a smaller country seeking the aid of a larger one without fear of dominance, right? So a great sage leader would be trained by the Dao De Jing, and this would have many lessons for such a leader who would come to lead a great civilization that lived in alignment with the great source. It's also an esoteric treatise on military strategy, so kind of like what I was talking about with how do you negotiate between great powers and smaller powers without domination. And it's a scientific, naturalistic approach to the cosmos, understanding with this term, I'll write down the organismic philosophy of ancient China, which is the idea that the cosmos are continuous and they are interconnected. So rather than the universe being a kind of theater of opposing forces and explosions and everything working, forces pulling and pushing against each other, there is an idea of this interconnected dynamic process of change, all seeking balance, essentially. So not opposing forces, that's not what makes things happen, but rather an interconnectedness, a spontaneity that is dynamic and harmonious. Okay. And the Dao De Jing suggests that the order of that whole and the spontaneous behavior of its parts and cooperation and harmony is beyond language. Anyway, that is what our organismic philosophy is. It's a philosophy of ancient China. Okay? So those are the different kind of ways to approach the Tao Te Ching that we can look at. Okay? Before we start, I do want to look at Solaris briefly, just because it's a cool book. And this is going to help us imagine the great source as it is imagined in fiction. I haven't actually finished Solaris yet. I'm about yay way through. I was just so amazed by the description of the great ocean in the planet, or on the planet. A great ocean that has learned actually to affect the gravitational pull of the planet to keep its orbit consistent, so it is allowed to produce life. Right, so the ocean has an awareness of the interconnectedness of all of the different parts of the solar system, of the universe, in order to manipulate and keep itself alive. Fascinating. So I'm going to go to page 21 to 24, and this will kind of set us off on our discussion before I turn the camera around and read the Dao De Jing. All right, so Solaris. The description of the ocean here, the ocean on the mystical planet of Solaris, a planet that completely baffles the scientists who can come up with no language to describe the way that the ocean reacts to their presence, creating their memories and pulling the quantities or the memories from their minds and turning them into real objects before them, manifesting them. They have no language to describe this ocean's intelligence, the way this ocean lives, if it even can be called alive. And you'll see that the way it is described is the same way that Lao Tzu describes the great source. So, I'll begin. For some time, there was a widely held notion, zealously fostered by the daily press, to the effect that the thinking ocean of Solaris was a gigantic brain, prodigiously well developed and several million years in advance of our own civilization, a sort of cosmic yogi, a sage, a symbol of omniscience, which had long ago understood the vanity of all action, and for this reason had retreated into an unbreakable silence. Now the Tao believes the advent of wisdom, or such ideals, for instance, of the Enlightenment, ideals of morality and righteousness and benevolence. All of those ideas largely supported also by Confucianism, were the insidious causes of conscious and deliberate action. And so This ocean, you see, has long since given up such action, right? Such as a sage king can pulls himself away from modern pathologies, the modern pathologies of life caused by the knowledge that fills you with false need, that drives you to false action. And of course it is action, your actions, that so often cause suffering for yourself and others. Now, the book goes on to say, the notion was incorrect, for the living ocean was active. But not active in the way that our modern pathologies would consider action. That's the big difference. No, it is true, according to human ideas, it did not build cities or bridges, nor did it manufacture flying machines. It did not try to reduce distances, nor was it concerned with the conquest of space, the ultimate criterion, some people thought, of man's superiority. But it was engaged in a never-ending process of transformation, an ontological auto-metamorphosis. So that there, allegedly, what is his name? I can't remember. Stanislaw Lem is saying that proves that it is not a kind of sage. But in fact, if we think about Gestalt and we think about Gnosis, it seems that this never-ending process of transformation is very much the same thing as the kind of organismic philosophy that says that the universe is an interconnected, dynamic creation that is constantly changing and constantly moving. That the Tao is not stasis. That non-action is not moving, not changing. So that's an important distinction. It is more along the lines of this fluid, never-ending process of transformation. So if you think about as we get old, we begin to stop changing. So much literature is about how as we get older and older, we become more and more rooted, more and more against change, less able to move with the way that the world flows around us. We don't learn as much from the world around us, but rather we're learning from these preconceived notions of the world in our minds. When you're a child, the world teaches you, but when you're an adult, you teach the world. And when you're teaching the world, sometimes you don't see the truth, and you become very much shut off from it. And so that's kind of what he means, I think, by never-ending process of transformation, rather than this building of cities or bridges, building of very rooted, static things. The moment you build a bridge, you have consigned it to death, which is an odd thing to think about. But you are essentially building dead things in the mind of the Tao. It's just that you're building things that don't move, they don't change, they don't flow. They will be broken down by the forces of this world until they disappear. Okay, so we'll go on. There were any amount of scientific neologisms in accounts of Solaris activities. Moreover, any scientist who devotes himself to the study of Solariana has the indelible impression that he can discern fragments of an intelligent structure, perhaps endowed with genius, haphazardly mingled with outlandish phenomena, apparently the product of an unhinged mind. Thus was born the conception of the autistic ocean rather than the ocean yogi. But these hypotheses resurrected one of the most ancient of philosophical problems, the relation between matter, unchangeable, destructible, and the mind, and between mind and consciousness. Western philosophy considers a separation between mind and body, but Eastern philosophy is different. Duhart was the first to have the audacity to maintain that the ocean possessed a consciousness. The problem, which the methodologists hastened to dub metaphysical, provoked all kinds of arguments and discussions. Was it possible for thought to exist without consciousness? Could anyone, in any case, apply the word thought to the processes observed in the ocean? Is a mountain only a huge stone? Is a planet an enormous mountain? Whatever the terminology, the new scale of size introduced new norms and new phenomena. The question appeared as a contemporary version of the problem of squaring the circle. Every independent thinker endeavored to register his personal contribution to the horde of Solaris studies. New theories proliferated. The ocean was evidence of a state of degeneration, of regression, following a phase of intellectual repletion. It was a deviant neoplasm, the product of the bodies of former inhabitants of the planet, whom it had devoured, swallowed up, dissolving and blending the residue into this unchanging, self-propagating form, supracellular in structure. And so, that is how we will begin thinking about the great source. Can thought exist without consciousness? Can consciousness exist without thought? Those are something that we will consider as we turn to the text itself and read from some of the beautiful verses that Lao Tzu gave us. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera around now. We begin with the Tao Te Ching. Here's the introduction, which says that the Tao Te Ching confronts and offers an alternative to our schizoid ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. I want to start with a chart that the book offers us. It's a really interesting chart. Just keep turning the pages. Here we go. Table 2. The two phases in the development of society and consciousness and their synthesis in the great integrity. So you have different phases. The yin phase of society, the yang phase of society, and then the future. Okay. And on the left here, you have all of these different aspects of life. And then each column depicts them at different points in time. It's a really fascinating chart. So let's start with arts. In the tribal societies, Epoch 1, you have magic. In the coercive civilizations, Epoch 2, you have folk, aesthetic, commercial arts. We're definitely at commercial arts right now. In Epoch 3, this is the moment of planetary holism. Epoch 3 is where living according to the Tao is achieved, right? Living according to the Tao is achieved in Epoch 3. That we return to the great Tao, we join the great life force. This is where we are going. It's an envisioning of the future according to the Tao. Bodily movement. First it was work. Now it is labor. Exercise for me. I exercise like an hour a day. Sports and dance. The future is integral movement. I have no idea what that means. Sorry, I laughed. Character phase, the incipient phase, birth of humanity. This is the creation, the coercive civilization. Coercive is getting people to do what you want by force. Caste, class phase, and the technological revolution. Now the future, the Epoch 3, would be the great integrity, the rebirth of humanity. So we'll read about that, what that looks like. Clothing was animal skins. Conspicuous dress is our dress now, and we will move to integral clothing. So everything is movement of need, clothing of need. Consciousness, naive holism, the national, the class, the individual. So the societies that you belong to, your nation, your class, and then your individual beliefs. And this would be belonging to a human consciousness. I honestly, personally, don't really super like that world that this is imagining, but here we are. Dance, tribal societies, ceremonial magic. Then we become formal, folk, popular, improvisation. The economy, here's some important one. Communal, slavery, feudalism, capitalism, all coercion. You see here, everything here is coercion, force, force, force. And here we see planetary synergy. Let's skip down to emotions. We have the functional emotion here in tribal society. Then coercive civilization has alienation, which I think we all feel to some extent. Schizoid. Schizoid is like the absence of affect, where you don't react to the world as you should. You have an unnatural reaction to stimulus. And the compensatory. Now, the future holds with it unqualified love. So we'll take a minute to just flag that. I'm going to highlight it because I do want to discuss what the book thinks of love in a second. Let's just highlight that really quickly. Okay. Let's think about political structure. Tribal democracy, kingdom, pseudo-democracy, fascism, bureaucratic socialism, all things that we see. And then planetary democracy is epoch 3. Alright. Let's see. I do like this. Recreation of ability to renew life, ceremony. In coercive civilization, it's compensatory escapes from stress, self-care. Recreation, self-care. In planetary holism, it's meta-recreation, exploration of human creative potentials. Oops, you can't even see, I'm so sorry. Exploration of human creative potentials. And let's see. Time frame. War in Epoch 3 is extinct. Ecumenical spirituality, metascience. Okay, so let's now go and think about unqualified love, which they say is the future of emotion. Okay, so here is where we describe, or the author describes, the different, squeaky desk, the different types of love. The great integrity, it is said here, is love. It is a love that uniquely expresses our deepest unarmed bonds with each other. On the highest level, we become love. Our language, like other aspects of our culture, tends to obfuscate our loss of wholeness and humanity. Since the experience of love requires this very wholeness and humanity that we have for the most part lost, our use of the term most often refers to the perversions of love that are compensatory for our loss. So here we're going to differentiate 5 types of love. I have written here that the first is contradictory to the great integrity, which is possessive love, loving an object because we are capable of possessing it, or at least believing that we possess it. Even one's mate or boyfriend, girlfriend might be loved as an object, and we see that all the time. And this is the most alienated form of love. Okay, and the civilizations for the past 5,000 years have been focused on possession. This sort of love objectifies, right? It objectifies people. It takes the life out of people. The second type of love is also contradictory, as you can see here, and that's codependent love. It is rooted in the experience of powerlessness and expresses itself as an addiction to control or to be controlled. This is probably something that I struggle with. Codependence in relationships. A relationship of codependent love is a struggle for competing dependencies and results in the mutual exploitation of immaturities. Codependency prevents self-growth and independence as well as genuine fulfillment. It is also a contradiction of the great integrity, but on a lesser level than the first. Now, the third type of love is getting closer to the great integrity, but it still contradicts it. The third type of love is romantic love. It is generally an unconscious escapist attempt to compensate for the absence of self-appreciation. It is therefore a search for that perfect mate who is imagined as having the qualities that the romantic lover lacks. Does anyone feel this, that they fall in love with people who possess what they do not have? You fall in love with someone who fulfills you, who has what is missing from you? I think sometimes. No, I don't think I fall under that. For the most part, I fall under codependence, I think. Whatever. So the romantic love contradicts the great integrity because it drives a wedge through or between the essential self and the imagined deficient self. So imagined, how is imagination always revealing the deficiencies of the real? Okay. Now, the fourth type of love is subjective, and this is aligned with the great integrity. This is the state of expression of a state of lovingness. There are no ulterior motives, no desire to fill a gap, no desire to for power, no desire to possess. It is freely given and received without armor, without protection. We're not fixated on a single possessive or codependent or romantic object, but we love and are loved by many people. Okay? In subjective love, not only humans, but animals, birds, plants, rocks, art, the entire gamut of nature is experienced in a loving way. So it is experiencing the world through love. Okay? And the final is become love. This is our total humanity. This is what Epoch 3 would achieve, which is our total humanity stripped of every shred of alienation, every premise of aggressive civilization, complete social actualization. The ideal state of being that Lao Tzu defines as the great integrity. Okay. So now let's go ahead and read from these poems, and we'll see that love. We'll also see how much of this book really does feel like it is written to a leader of some kind. So we have pictures. As you can see, there's the ocean. And this is verse 1 of the Dao De Jing, called, as you can see here, Transcending. Okay. The Tao that can be told is not the universal Tao. The name that can be named is not the universal name. In the infancy of the universe, there were no names. Naming fragments the mysteries of life into 10,000 things and their manifestations. Yet mysteries and manifestations spring from the same source, the the great integrity, which is the mystery within manifestation, the manifestation within mystery, the naming of the unnamed and the unnaming of the named. When these interpretations are in full attendance, we will pass the gates of naming notions in our journey toward transcendence. So naming is a form of objectification, a form of possessive love. When you name, you say, I have this. And so the Tao is not really the Tao, or the Tao is not really the Tao, because we couldn't possibly name the Tao. So when we speak of it, we are speaking of something that is nameless. When the universe began, there were no names, so everything was together. They were not independent of each other. But then we took the universal and we smashed it into fragments and named it into 10,000 things. Okay. Interpenetrations. I don't think I said that right. Now, oh, you can really see the ring light there with the black. Modesty. Go to the next one here. Is it here? Yeah. Okay. Over-fulfillment. Sorry. Keep filling your bowl and it will spill over. Keep sharpening your knife and it will be blunt. Keep hoarding gold in your house and you will be robbed. Keep seeking approval and you will be chained. The great integrity leads to actualization, never over fulfillment. Just rest with that for a moment. Oh, this one's pretty. I didn't mark this one, but look at the birch trees here and snow. The importance of what is not. Verse 11. Let's read this. This is great. We join 30 spokes to the hub of a wheel, yet it's the center hole that drives the chariot. We shape clay to birth a vessel, yet it's the hollow within that makes it useful. We chisel doors and windows to construct a room, yet it's the inner space that makes it livable. Thus do we create what is to use, what is not. Wow. Thus do we create what is, to use what is not. That is a brilliant. I love that. This might be my favorite. I ought to put a post-it note on this one. I'm going to read that one again just because I love it. We join the 30 spokes to the hub of a wheel, yet it's the center hole that drives the chariot. I love this. The inner space that makes it livable. It's emptiness. And so we should perhaps create more emptiness in our lives to make room to use that emptiness. Beautiful. I need to think about that. Choices. Colors can make us blind. Music can make us deaf. Flavors can destroy our taste. Possessions can close our options. Racing can drive us mad, and its rewards obstruct our peace. Thus the wise fill the inner gut rather than the eyes, always sacrificing the superficial for the essential. I do feel that the time I was most free was when I had the least. When I was young, and I was a waitress, and I lived in this little room in a neighborhood and I had nothing, like very little clothes and very little food, and I just rented this little room at the end of a train station, and it was by the sea, and I felt like that was worth everything, because I could go every morning and run by the water, and that was probably the freest I've ever been. And now that I have a house and things, I'm always trying to escape the house. Like go on trips and trying to get away. And my favorite place to be, of all places, is the highway. I love the highway. I've always had this dream of just driving everywhere, and living out of a camper. And because I just don't want to be surrounded by things. You want to be surrounded by life, and how it's in infinite variations. People, writers love people, I think. Anyway, let's go now to this one I have here, leaders. So this is where we get to his political advice to leaders, because this is a very political book. Okay. There are 4 types of leaders. The best leader is indistinguishable from the will of those who selected her. The next best leader enjoys the love and praise of the people. The poor leader rules through coercion and fear. And the worst leader is a tyrant despised by the multitudes who are the victims of his power. What a world of difference among these leaders. In the last 2 types, what is done is without sincerity or trust, only coercion. In the second type, there is harmony between the leader and the people. In the first type, whatever is done happens so naturally that no one presumes to take the credit. So the best leader is the leader that you don't even know is there, like the great integrity. Okay. Don't need to read about paradoxes today. No, thank you. Alright. Sincerity. I like this one. Sincerity. Speak few words, but say them with quietude and sincerity, and they will be long-lasting. For raging wind cannot blow all morning, nor a sudden rainstorm last throughout the day. Why is this so? Because it is the nature of the sky and the earth to be frugal. Even human beings cannot alter this nature without suffering the consequences. When we sincerely follow the ethical path, we will become one with it. When we become one with the ethical path, it embraces us. When we completely lose our way, we become one with loss. When we become one with loss, loss embraces us. When we sincerely follow the great integrity, we become one with it. When we are one with the great integrity, it embraces us. But when nothing is done sincerely, no thing and no one embraces us. Next one. Who are you? Let me bring this down a little bit so you can read it. It's hard for me to fit everything. Verse 33. Who are you? Like the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland. Who are you? If you understand others, you are astute. If you understand yourself, you are insightful. If you master others, you are uncommonly forceful. If you master yourself, you have uncommon inner strength. If you know when you have enough, you are wealthy. If you carry your intentions to completion, you are resolute. If you find your roots and nourish them, you will know longevity. If you live a long creative life, you will leave an eternal legacy. That's a great one to think about every day. Know when you have enough. I never feel that I do. Master yourself. I'm always on that process. For me, it's consuming that's hard to master. Consuming things. It's difficult to stop. Difficult to master. And to always live a long creative life. Read everything. Create whenever you can. Learn music. Too much invites disaster. It's all about balance. What is overexpanded becomes diminished. What is too strong becomes weakened. What is too high is cut down. What is overpossessed becomes impoverished. It is in the nature of process that in the final stages, those who are overextended, overarmed, and overprivileged shall be overcome. Disaster stalks the fish which swims up from its deep water home, and the army which threatens to conquer those beyond its own borders. So if you are too much of something, you are in the final stages, because you shall soon be overcome. Sorry for this light ring, but if I turn it off, it'll be too dark. What I like about this is let's go past that one actually. Here we are. The value of minimums. That which is most tender can overcome that which is most rigid. That which has least substance can penetrate that which has least space. Acting without deliberate action and teaching without uttering a word is so rarely practiced. So few find their way to the great integrity. I love this teaching without uttering a word, because most teaching occurs when you don't even know you're doing it. We observe, we watch, we learn from everything. And so teach by being that which you wish to see. It's a very good old adage. Okay. The whole is in each of us. Oh, the whole is in each part. So this is the Gestalt. Excuse me, the Gestalt I was talking about. Gestalt. Whatever is planted deeply is not easily uprooted. Whatever is embraced sincerely does not crave escape. Ever since we lost our intuition as our main guide in life, these virtues have had to be consciously cultivated to survive. Cultivate them in yourself and they will be genuine. Cultivate them in your family and they will surely flourish. Cultivate them in your community and they will be long-lasting. Cultivate them in your country and they will be widely propagated. Cultivate them in the world and they will become universal. In this way you will know others by what you do yourself. You will know families by what you contribute as a family. You will know the world by what you do as a planetary citizen. How do we know all this? Because we know that each part is the whole, and the whole is in each part. Okay, we'll do, I think, one more now. Let's see what this one is. Go to the land. The paradoxes of life. We'll end on paradox with this nice man in the, I can't see, so I don't know if you can read with this god-awful circle, but here we go. Profound words are not clever. Clever words are not profound. Wise people are not quarrelsome, and quarrelsome people are not wise. Those who are intelligent are not ideologues. Those who are ideologues are not intelligent. The enlightened never hoard anything. They share their possessions. The more they give, the greater their abundance. The great integrity is the physician of the universe, who heals without harming and who acts without contention. And I think a final one. We'll just talk about states becoming small. We'll end on this as a plea for peace, because that's ultimately what the Tao is. It is a interconnectedness not only in the universe but among our societies, our individual societies, a planetary cooperation. In our era, when the great integrity has been lost, separate states have arisen. Some become very large, others remain very small. When the larger ones try to conquer the small, at first the smaller ones are defeated, even though yang aggression meets yang resistance. But death stalks the people on both sides of war. It is not better for great countries to be like vast low-lying lands into which all streams passively go. Is it not better for the great countries to be like vast low-lying lands into which all streams passively go, and the smaller countries, like the innocent streams, can be welcomed at the end of their passage by wide open arms, calmly receiving their flow? Would not this mutual humility save countless lives now, while serving as a rehearsal for the coming of the Tao? And so let us finish on that. A directive for peace, that you wait for people to come to you, and you do not push anything of your own on them. Right? A mutual humility. That's what we'll end on. That none of us know, and all of us come from the same source. Okay. I hope you have a wonderful night, and thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye now.